This episode is dedicated to our beloved cat Loki, who died unexpectedly last week at the age of 14. Like Fiver, he was a bit different, and he will be missed. The Watership Down podcast is intended for listeners who are familiar with the plot. There definitely will be spoilers. This episode is scripted by Newell Fisher and Ogpuee. It is narrated, recorded and edited by Newell Fisher. Hello, and welcome to the Watership Down Podcast episode 202, in which we will be looking at the portrayal of Fiver from the 1978 film to the 2018 Netflix miniseries. First though, last time you may remember that I said the full episode listing, which is section 2, would form the notes for the last episode. Unfortunately, the full listing is too long for either Spotify podcast notes or for YouTube notes, either for specific videos or as a YouTube blog post. So the complete section 1 is now available as a YouTube blog post, but the only place where you can find the complete episode listing is in the Watership Down Podcast Honeycomb group on Facebook, where the full text of the whole guide is both a pinned post and an uploaded document. Next, there's been an interesting comment on the last episode on YouTube by a listener with the handle Ogpuee. Quote, "There's a book called Frost Dancers by Gary Kilworth. It's also a British novel about lagomorphs, specifically hares. At one point, the main character, the mountain hare named Skelter, is reluctantly forced to spend the night in a rabbit warren. In this novel, hares and rabbits hate each other. At one moment, there's an in-joke referencing Watership Down, where the rabbits mention a great epic journey led by the famous Le Noisetier and the prophet Le Cinquième, that is, Hazel and Fiver. In this book, all wild rabbits have French names. And when Skelter meets their prophet, Le Septième, he remarks that the guy must have eaten too many mushrooms. As for the book itself, I highly recommend it. It's a solid piece of xenofiction literature, and Kilworth really put in the work, creating the cultures of two hare species with attention to scientific accuracy." End quote. Thank you for that information, Ogpuee, and welcome to the Owsler. Lastly, as a matter of interest, this coming Friday, the 9th of May 2025, will be Richard Adams' 105th birthday. Sadly, he left us 9 years ago. Anyway, let's get back to Fiver. The portrayal of Fiver from 1978 to 2018. In the 1978 film, Fiver is represented as being a slightly lighter brown than his brother Hazel, with large, permanently worried-looking eyes. He is voiced by British actor Richard Briers, whose version of Fiver's voice has come under some criticism at times over the years since. Personally, I have no issue with it, except for a few moments when his voice strains a little under the sheer range of moods and states of mind required of Fiver. At first, Fiver's actions follow the beginning of the book very closely, but when they find the notice board, Fiver's terror there and his nightmare that night are all rolled into one, with his terrifying vision of the fields covered in blood. The need to telescope the plot results in an instant decision to go and see the Thra, and in an added scene where Fiver makes a brief speech to a crowd of sylph-laying rabbits about how they must leave the warren, resulting in several of them listening in on the meeting with the Thra. Fiver's interaction with the chief rabbit is very true to the book, only Fiver just panics and runs away rather than going into a panic-induced fit. We also hear an angry Thra referring to Hazel and Fiver as a pair of lunatics as he dresses down Bigwig after they leave. Having left Sandalford, this Fiver is as emotionally affected by the wood as Pipkin rather than retaining his good mood. Having just spoken about finding a high, lonely place to settle in, he shivers in fear when Bigwig mentions having to leave them behind when the dog appears in the wood. And when Blackberry finds the piece of wood, Fiver promptly falls off it and has to be retrieved from the water. Here he seems to have no understanding of what the plan is for getting across the Enbourne. Once across the Enbourne, they encounter the road first, and there is an effective shot of Fiver's face as he looks ahead of him, clearly worried for the future. And then they rest at the beanfield, where Fiver witnesses the first death in the film as the added character of Violet ventures into the open and is taken by a bird of prey. He simply says, "Violet's gone," as the others join him. He seemingly could have done nothing to prevent it. Fiver plays little part in the rat attack in the derelict church that is inserted in this point of the story, instead of the rat attack in the barn that comes after the Warren of the Snares in the book. It seems he also had no warning of this either. And then, in the rain and in the middle of an argument, Blackberry asks what if Fiver was wrong. This is very different from the rebellion of the book, as all the original rebels are absent. In response, rather than seeing Watership Down in the distance, Fiver goes into a fearful trance about those who go back not being safe. Cowslip interrupts this truncated rebellion as he is spotted by Blackberry instead of Fiver. Instantly, Fiver reacts fearfully towards the new rabbit when he refers to having plenty of empty burrows and says they should have nothing to do with him or his warren. He is put down by Bigwig and unsuccessfully appeals to Hazel before reluctantly following him. Once in the warren, we see Fiver with the others, but not choosing to eat the flayra that has been made available and asking where everyone is. He asks the others if they think the man puts the food out of kindness. Then he says that the warren seems unnatural, evil and twisted. He ends by saying that the place feels like mist, like being deceived and losing our way. This has replaced the conversation with Hazel on the common. Cowslip's appearance interrupts Fiver, and events are now summarised heavily as he quotes the poet Silverweed briefly, Silverweed never appearing or being named. We see Fiver's disgust at what he is hearing, and he runs from the warren saying he has had enough. Here there is no forcing him back underground multiple times. As Hazel and Bigwig catch up with him, we see Fiver acting submissively as Bigwig rounds on him. In the book, his reaction is not recorded, but this is not the Fiver who later stands up to Vervain. Bigwig leaves them and is snared. Fiver's role becomes purely practical as he fetches the rabbits Hazel specifies. He also manages to have a conversation with Cowslip that is briefer and less violent than the book. Fiver is still the last, smallest rabbit to dig the peg out, and the one who finishes the job. With Bigwig apparently dead, Fiver delivers a very summarised version of his Warren of the Snares sermon before it becomes clear Bigwig is still alive. This, rather than his report of Cowslip's reaction to the snaring, provokes the others to want to go back and take revenge. And then Bigwig revives. Here, Fiver's main sermon is now far more optimistic, as his speech to Hazel about the high lonely hills is transplanted from the common and delivered to the whole group, as we see Watership Down revealed in the distance. The reordering of events has made Fiver's role here a lot more inspirational, and without the complication of Strawberry joining them, the action moves now to just outside Nuthanger Farm. Once Hazel and Pippin's foray into the farm is over, we move on to the arrival of Holly at the ditch in the lane leading from the farm. The mutilated Holly says he remembers Fiver, who saw it coming, and when he is done telling of the destruction of Sandalford, Fiver paraphrases his line from the book, saying of humans, "They'll never rest until they've spoiled the earth," thus increasing his priestly role in the film. After Holly's further account of Ephrafa, we arrive at last at the foot of Watership Down. Fiver enthusiastically confirms to Hazel that he wants them to climb the down, and the famous tableau of the rabbits at the summit concludes with Hazel reminding them all that Fiver found this place. Their respect for him now has firm foundations. With the arrival of Kihar, Fiver seems to realise why Hazel took a look at the farm earlier, because he was already thinking about the dough problem. And when Hazel decides to go on the raid to Nuthanger, we hear Fiver briefly ask if there's any point in asking him not to go. This is far more reserved than what he says in the book, but Hazel should still have listened. With Hazel shot and apparently dead, we arrive at one of Fiver's most significant sequences in the film. As Blackberry delivers the news about Hazel, he says no, and adding Hazel's not dead, he moves down the slope straight away. There is no nightmare here in which he talks with a human who wants to hang Hazel up on a notice board. To the beautiful accompaniment of the song Bright Eyes, Fiver follows the black rabbit of Inlay through misty woods and fields, pausing at the iron tree, to where Hazel lies injured in the culvert. Although Fiver seems to know Hazel is alive, this sequence seems to be a beautiful and sad glimpse into the world Fiver lives in, a world where the inevitability of death cannot be ignored. We glimpse ghostly stylised rabbits playing together, and then one of them dying. I would argue that this one scene in the film has done more to add to the Watership Down mythos than almost any other. It is impossible to watch it without feeling strong emotion. Events are heavily truncated now. Hazel arrives immediately on the summit of Watership Down with Fiver. There is no extended metaphysical discussion at the foot of the hill, nor any party to arrive back exhausted from Ephrafa. Holly has already been there somehow. Fiver's role moves very much into the background as they head off for Ephrata, despite Holly's warning. Fiver's view on this is not mentioned. On the way to Ephrata, Fiver spots the homba or fox and guesses what Bigwig is doing, drawing it off. Later, with Bigwig in Ephrata, he comments to Heisensley that he has a friend who talks like her when she reveals her psychic powers. As the escape from Ephrata begins, we see Fiver with the others by the punt. He has had no role in the plan to use it here. We next see him, noticeably, back on Watership Down as peace reigns. But Fiver's relative lack of involvement in the film is about to end with his last significant scene. As the Ephrathans dig their way into the honeycomb, we see Fiver's eyes wide open in fear. But this is no ordinary fear. He is entering a trance state, as it seems that something from the other world may be delivering a terrible message to him. He says, "How cold?" without saying exactly what is cold, adding that he is trying to listen, only he can't hear it, and he is going away and floating. Then he is on his back, repeating, "How cold?" The loud military music of the siege has been replaced by eerie music. Fiver cries out, but there is no impersonation of Rowsby Woof beyond Fiver suddenly then shouting, "Get out!" as his story has been absent, meaning that his words would mean nothing to anyone who has not read the book. This cry is heard by two digging Ephrathans and spooks them. Meanwhile, Bigwig is telling Hazel to stop Fiver as the others will go Tharn. And then Fiver sits up. His message is ready, as he says, still in a trance, that there's a dog loose in the wood. He repeats the words. In the book, Hazel hears these words in his mind alone, but here the idea he is about to have begins directly with Fiver. Hazel remembers Bigwig's words by the River Enbourne, and Fiver's task is complete. In the background, we see Fiver coming round from his trance. Here, he will not have to be left unconscious in the honeycomb during Bigwig's fight with Woundwort. Neither will Fiver, on coming round, get to terrify the absent Vervain. We see Fiver next to Bigwig as he blocks the run the three runners have just left by. As Hazel begs Frith for the lives of his people, we see Fiver again with the others as the digging above continues. He seems to look calm, unlike Pipkin. Next we see him with two does behind Bigwig as he prepares to fight Woundwort. Then, as brave Pipkin backs away from Woundwort, we see Fiver again, and then looking on in horror as the fight begins. The last time we see Fiver in the film, sadly, is as he retreats in fear in the face of a seemingly victorious Woundwort. The film cuts straight from the arrival of the dog on Watership Down to Hazel's own poignant encounter with the other world. In the 1984 Australian radio play, Fiver seems a little less vulnerable than Pipkin. He dreams of the kind of high place they need to reach before they reach the River Enbourne, and the crow only attacks Pipkin once they cross. Once they reach the road, it is Fiver who takes the lead crossing it. Fiver then has his vision of going through a mist in an abandoned church that may have been influenced by the 1978 film. Hazel initially agrees with Fiver about Cowslip not seeming right somehow, and Fiver doesn't need to imagine bones in the roof of the Great Burrow, as the warren seems to be actually located in a graveyard in this version. When the Nuthanger Farm raid is about to happen, Fiver has a vision of a dying bird representing Hazel. And Fiver's dream after Hazel is shot is properly represented from the book, though there is no mention of a bloody hole. Much later, when the Ephrathans arrive on Watership Down, Fiver, in his trance, talks directly of a dog killing rabbits. He is left unconscious and gets to confront Vervain, but unlike the book, he mentions the dog to Vervain himself. In Tales from Watership Down, published in 1996, the first tale opens with an argument between Bigwig and Fiver, in which Fiver says Elachera was always the same age. In Chapter 6, Coltsfoot, who tells the rabbit's ghost story, is mentioned as having been one of the Ephrathans who surrendered to Fiver in the honeycomb. And when Coltsfoot is unable to continue, it is Fiver who comforts him. When the tale is over, he reassures them about the nature of ghosts as being traces of past events rather than conscious beings forced to relive horrific events over and over. In Chapter 12, we learn more of the relationship between Fiver and his mate Vilthuriel, who is also sensitive to the otherworld, it seems. With the arrival of Flyeth from Thiniel, Fiver is consulted on his view of her, as her arrival has been foretold by Vilthuriel. And when Flyeth says she wants to leave to form a safer warren, Fiver says to just let her, as the warren on Watership Down is getting too large anyway. This contrasts with Bigwig having wanted to kill her. Fiver then agrees with Heisensley, becoming co-chief rabbit with Hazel. Fiver also recommends a less violent approach to the arrogant rabbit Sandwood, seeming to know that he will eventually overstep the mark. And when the human stinking stone crop causes unrest on Watership Down, Hazel asks Fiver to think of a solution. He senses that Stonecrop will be fine at the new warren between Watership Down and Ephrafa, though he cannot explain why, though he senses it will involve violence. And he is right, as Stonecrop proves to be all they needed to deter an attack by weasels. This, sadly, is the last time Richard Adams wrote of his character Fiver seeing the future. He last writes of Fiver as he tries to negotiate what is to be done about Campion, who has grown bored leading Ephrafa and wants to return to wide patrols. It is agreed that he will move to Watership Down, and although ultimately his wide patrols lead to his death, it is as if Fiver knew this was a worthwhile risk in order for him to be the rabbit he wanted to be. Fiver, above many others, must know how important this is. In the 1999 to 2001 TV series, Fiver's gifts become a far more frequent feature, and his visions are delivered as rhyming couplets. In the light of the original story, this can seem to be a cheapening of his character. However, this begins right from the start with a non-rhyming vision, when we see a contented Fiver by the river endboard having a sudden vision that goes, "Hind lonely hills, where the wind carries every whisper." In this version, it seems Fiver cannot just have the intelligence to know what they should be looking for. Everything will be fed to him in visions. His vision continues, saying that there is no hope for anyone who stay behind in Sandalford. With the attitude of some in the group towards his visions, you wonder why they listen to him at all. Events move rapidly as Fiver and Pipkin have a close escape from the dog. They rapidly reach Nuthanger Farm, where Keehaw and Hannah the Mouse join the group, and the episode ends on Watership Down, Fiver's promised land. On Watership Down, Fiver has a dream about Captain Holly before getting caught up in the issue of whether Buck should dig, beating Bigwig in a game of bobstones over the issue. Never gamble with a psychic. The digging of the honeycomb is followed by the arrival of Holly on Watership Down, who confirms Fiver's worst fears about Sandalford. Holly says he left a rabbit called Pimpernel at another warren. This is the warren of the snares, which appears later than in the original story, in which Pimpernel is killed by the rabbits of that warren, Holly being unable to save him. Right from the start, Fiver feels unease about this new warren. He can tell Holly has doubts about its chief rabbit, Cowslip. On arrival, Fiver instantly dislikes the place. He has a creepy moment involving Cowslip staring right at him as he speaks to someone else, which prompts a rhyming vision about the ceiling of the great burrow being made of bones. The rabbits of this warren all have the same dead stare. And then Silverweed arrives in his first film portrayal and terrifies Fiver with his poem about death. Fiver stays above ground and is mocked by Bigwig, despite having been proven right about Sandalford already in this version. Fiver also says Pimpernel is dead. Bigwig's snaring proves Fiver right again. Only here they do attack Cowslip's warren in revenge once he has miraculously recovered. But Cowslip's ravings demonstrate this is a place to leave immediately, which they do, joined by Strawberry, also in his first film portrayal. Back on Watership Down, Fiver senses a new danger as Bigwig goes on patrol and encounters Ephraffans for the first time. In a bizarre diversion from the original story, Fiver immediately sets off for Ephrafa with Hazel and Bigwig, accompanied by Keehaw. Having nearly died from going Tharn on the Iron Road, Fiver has a vision about two having to enter Ephrafa in order for two to leave. The newly love-struck Hazel, who is determined to rescue Primrose, who is basically Heisensley, and her friend Blackavar, who they have both seen trying to escape, decides this means they should go and see Woundwort. A brilliant plan. Having been taken before Woundwort, Hazel and Fiver face execution. But the nearby Keehaw tells Bigwig he trusts Fiver, who promptly has a vision that petrifies Woundwort about a place called Darkhaven. We will hear a lot more about that place later. He also sees the death of Woundwort's mother, the major trauma of his life. In his terror, Woundwort releases them both. As they run, they are pursued anyway by the Ephraffans, and Fiver says they have made a dangerous enemy. Fiver joins Hazel, Pipkin and Keehaw on a raid on Nuthanger Farm, and promptly has a vision about the Black Rabbit of Inlay. He grows more and more nervous, but Hazel ploughs on regardless. Having just rescued Just Clover, an encounter with a cat is followed by Hazel getting shot. Fiver and Keehaw promptly find Hazel in the drain, and his recovery is almost instant once Keehaw gets the shotgun pellets out. And so we are back to Ephrafa, but now Hazel is checking with Fiver, who seems relaxed about the plan to get Primrose and Blackavar out. The plan promptly goes well, as Woundwort is left in the River Test as the escapees float away. Back on Watership Down, Fiver has one of his rhyming visions that Redstone, the former warren of Primrose, just rescued from Ephrafa, has been abandoned. Once Hazel and Primrose have left for Redstone, Fiver has another vision that a weasel who they fought in the last spring is returning for revenge. The frequency of Fiver's visions in this series really is a bit over the top at times. Hawkbit seems to agree with this, saying his visions just cause problems. He calls Fiver a curse on the warren. Fiver takes himself off, Hawkbit's words having been enough to convince him that his visions actually bring about the future he predicts. This Fiver is a lot more sensitive than the original. But, of course, Redstone is abandoned, apparently only occupied by Captain Broom, voiced by Richard Briers, who voiced Fiver in the 1978 film. And then, of course, the Weasel arrives back on Watership Down, finding the solitary Fiver first. Fiver is rescued from the Weasel by a party headed by Bigwig. The returning Hazel then goes to see Fiver to reassure him that Redstone had been long abandoned, he was not the cause of it, and Hawkbit apologises. On a raid to Nuthanger Farm, Fiver manages to get stuck under a wheelbarrow while escaping from a cat. He manages to predict none of this. Hawkbit's discovery of the caves under Watership Down causes Fiver to have another vision of a black space below, which is never fully explained. He reassures the panicking Hawkbit when they become lost and expresses admiration for the beauty of these caves. And shortly afterwards, when they find the way out, he points out that what seemed so frightening before has now become part of their warren. As the rabbits of Watership Down set about laying diversions to prevent the Afrafans finding their warren, they end up with an unconscious Campion outside a large greenhouse. Fiver warns of something alien and cold about this place. And of course, Hazel and Campion end up trapped in the greenhouse for the night with a large snake as well as two sadistic parrots. Later, Fiver has a terrible dream that they are trapped with something utterly alien. Campion's rescue ensures his future loyalty to Watership Down. Later, as Campion struggles with his loyalties, Fiver comments that lying is not natural for rabbits. And Pipkin's kidnap by Ephrafa ends Season 1. Fiver's involvement with the rescue of Pipkin is not particularly worthy of note, except that he expresses some support for Pipkin after he prevents Bigwig from killing Woundwort. In fact, overall, he becomes a bit of a side character for a few episodes, including those in which they have the genius idea of going to the seaside. And then we come to the refounding of Redstone Warren, where Fiver has another vision in which he predicts Woundwort and Cowslip uniting against Watership Down, though he doesn't name them. Later, he sees the face of the Black Rabbit of Inlay in the sky, and has another vision about them being saved by a lone figure who they cannot save. A clear reference to Campion or possibly Silverweed, bearing in mind the end of Season 3. And now we are distracted again from the subject of Ephrafa as Fiver decides to go raiding an orchard and gets detained by Bark the Badger. She turns out to just have a few boundary issues, and Fiver has to rescue her from being attacked by his companions as they try to rescue him. And Watership Down has gained another ally. Fiver is then involved in the plot to free Campion by making Vavain, his accuser, look insane. He helps by pretending to be under the spell of Frith's messenger along with Hazel and Bigwig. And now comes the distraction of these Christmas episodes, in which Fiver appears to have a false vision of losing one of their number as they cross frozen ice. Bigwig does fall through but survives. However, he does accurately sense that the danger in the maze they end up in comes not from the rabbits who live there or from the humans who feed them. And indeed the only danger turns out to be the fox that has pursued them since the ice. The following spring, Fiver is completely taken in by the two confidence tricksters who arrive on the down. And then sheep arrive on the down, and Fiver has to rescue Dandelion from the sheepdog they lead to the sheep after he goes Tharm. As Bigwig's overbearing attitude drives Hannah the Mouse away, Fiver's involvement remains light. And then we reach the season climax. Fiver has a terrifying vision about a darkness coming for all of them. They will only survive if one of them dies. This repeats his earlier vision, but this time it is so powerful it renders him unconscious. This seems to predict events that end Season 2, but it actually accurately refers to the end of Season 3. Fiver is then involved in the defence of Watership Down from the Efrafan attack through the secret entrance and caves beneath the down. He even kicks a couple of Efrafans. The collapse of the caverns seemingly killing Campion ends Season 2, and Hazel and Fiver sit watching the sunset in the aftermath of the battle. This was where the series ended in the UK. Season 3 begins with the shocking destruction of Efrafa by the rabbits of Watership Down and their allies. It opens with Fiver giving a recap of events. Beneath Watership Down, Fiver says that he doesn't think Campion is gone, but soon he is recruited to go and see Bark the Badger to recruit her in the approaching battle. Blackberry accompanies him, and they discuss Campion. Later, he has another vision in which he talks of a long black trail leading to the light if you follow your heart. In the ensuing battle, Efrafa is destroyed and Woundwort apparently killed. As the victors depart, Fiver looks back over his shoulder nervously, and Woundwort emerges, alive. As the Warren on Watership Down tries to accommodate the surviving Efrafans, Fiver continues discussing Campion with Blackberry. And when the Efrafans eventually leave under their new leader Moss, he asks Fiver what the future holds for them, but Fiver sees nothing. Given his history of visions, that's probably a good thing. Later, on a patrol, Woundwort's sidekick Vervain is found sinking into a swamp. Fiver, along with Broom, argues for compassion. From the point of view of survival, this was not wise, but Fiver looks beyond that, and that is his fundamental difference with Bigwig. Later he has a vision of Woundwort's survival, the one-eyed evil, and how he'll gather an army. And Vervain reconnects with Woundwort shortly afterwards. Back on Watership Down, Fiver continues to question whether Campion has truly gone, and not long afterwards Pipkin confirms that he is still alive. When Blackberry asks him how Campion is doing, he feels nothing until she pats him on the shoulder, at which point he has a vision about her and Campion going into a valley of fire from which they may not survive. Woundwort, who is at Redstone Warren, senses Fiver's mind encroaching on his. This is new. Well, except for when Fiver literally saw Woundwort's past in Efrafa, terrifying him. And he knows that Fiver's visions are how Hazel keeps winning. He says Fiver must die. Vervain suggests using Silverweed at Cowslip's Warren to counter Fiver's powers, and so the scene is set for the very magical climax of this series. On Watership Down, Fiver has a vision of Hawkbit being in danger that exempts him from an expedition to Redstone Warren. Nothing further seems to come of this. And on the way to Redstone, Fiver has a vision of its destruction at the hands of humans, which they promptly witness. As Woundwort takes Silverweed from the Warren of the Snares, Primrose and Blackberry leave Watership Down to search for Woundwort. Meanwhile, Hannah is seeking magic from the Hedge Wizard, who already knows Fiver's name. Fiver has a narrow escape from a patrol from Darkhaven, the Valley of Fire he predicted, and Blackberry is captured. And now the role of magic really starts to take hold, as Fiver has a terrifying dream in which Silverweed pursues him through a surreal landscape. Later, Silverweed succeeds in capturing Fiver's mind for long enough to get a good look at the Warren on Watership Down. Fiver now dare not open his eyes, and leaves Watership Down with the party intent on capturing Silverweed. Partway to Darkhaven, Dandelion is told to look after Fiver, who can never return to Watership Down unless they return. Fiver succeeds in reversing Silverweed's magic, and is able to control him for long enough for the others to get him out of Darkhaven. He holds the connection with Silverweed's mind for long enough for Silverweed to experience how wonderful life is on Watership Down. After that, he needs no persuasion to leave Darkhaven. As Silverweed arrives on Watership Down, full of joy, Fiver said it is like having another brother. Quite the reversal from the original story. From this point forward, he almost seems to take Fiver's place at times. Spartina of Darkhaven allows herself to be found and taken to Watership Down. There she intimidates Silverweed. However, she is then persuaded by the Warren on Watership Down that she is on the wrong side. After Spartina is captured trying to escape, Silverweed persuades them that she is sincere by allowing Bigwig to see her mind. His abilities differ from Fiver in that he can see a rabbit's trail to tomorrow, or their destiny perhaps. They set off back to Darkhaven with Spartina. On the journey, Fiver has a vision that places him in danger because of its timing. This vision predicts that they cannot defeat Darkhaven by force, only by magic, but that one of them will have to pay for this victory. Later, back on Watership Down, he has a terrifying vision of a shadow creeping over the land towards the Warren, and he repeats his vision of a magical victory for which one of them will pay a price. In a lull in the battle with Darkhaven on Watership Down, Fiver confronts Silverweed about Hannah the Mouse's future. He senses she is carrying powerful magic, but that she will pay a terrible price for using it. Silverweed asks Fiver what he would give to save his friends and Warren. Fiver's answer is anything, everything. As the battle on Watership Down seems lost, Silverweed, who has stolen the magic from Hannah, deploys it, and Woundwort and Darkhaven are destroyed. In the aftermath, they discover Silverweed, now very old, and Fiver's last words in the series repeat his previous prophecy: "A friend will pay, and we will sorrow." In the 2002 BBC radio play, Fiver is described early on by Hazel as being very talented in the psychic area. As is the apparent convention, he is voiced by a slightly higher-pitched male voice. Fiver's vision here has been of a field covered in bodies rather than blood, and much later his vision that leads to finding the injured Hazel is missed out completely as Keha finds him. He does, however, say that Hazel is not dead. It is also Keha who finds the punt in this version. However, his vision at the Battle of Watership Down is more extensive here, and more or less hands Hazel the entire plan with the dog. And at the end, he apologises to Woundwort himself for his death, which I must say is quite satisfying. In the 2016 BBC radio play, Fiver narrates his own terrifying mechanistic nightmare before then seeing the notice board that merely confirms his vision. Much later, Fiver is okay with the Warren of the Snares at first, and it is only Silverweed's poem that first makes him uneasy about this strange Warren. Later still, the Black Emissary, as the Black Rabbit is called here, visits Fiver in his dreams to help him find Hazel. The human at the Bloody Hole is introduced, and the emissary apparently enables Fiver to understand what he is saying. Having rescued Hazel, we are treated to an extensive portrayal of the conversation between him and Fiver at the foot of the hill, one of the most intriguing sections of the original story. Once they set off for Ephrata, Fiver's role becomes more background for a while, but he does comment that Woundwort does not know defeat as they float away down the River Test. Later, he gives Hazel his big idea for defeating Woundwort more or less just by barking while in a trance, and he does not get to telling anyone he is sorry for their death. And at the end, there is a touching conversation between Hazel, Fiver and Heisenley near the end of Hazel's life. I do not think, personally, that Fiver's character suffers as much from the Netflix miniseries as Hazel or Bigwig. His visions are well portrayed here overall, and he comes across more or less as he does in the original story. Please let me know if you disagree and why. Fiver's vision of what is coming to Sandalford happens before finding the notice board, as in the 2016 radio play. Here, Fiver finds himself stuck in a moment in time during Sandalford's destruction, and this is very effective. On finding the notice board, he ignores it, instead just focusing on the fairly subdued field covered in blood. When seeing the Freya, Fiver shouts at him rather than having a panic attack. This Fiver, if anything, is a bit more assertive in the early part of the story than in the book. While waiting to leave Sandalford, Fiver comments on a tin can floating past as a sign of increased human activity. There follows the low point of the pursuit down the Enbourne by the Sandalford Owsler. Later, in an effective moment that I have used as the image for this episode, Fiver sees Watership Down in the distance in the rain. In the derelict church, Fiver suggests that whatever Bigwig has heard is the Black Rabbit, which is out of character. In this world of a definite supernatural, the psychic Fiver is more of a seeker after truth in the book than portrayed here. Once free of the crow attack, Fiver has to reassure Hazel about his leadership, before then being ignored in order to allay the sarcasm of the others when Fiver warns against going to Cowslip's Warren. From the very start, Fiver is unsettled about the healthiness of these rabbits and the empty burrows. He borrows the absent Pipkin's phrase, like trees in November. After Hazel's shocking attack on his brother, Fiver creeps back underground, only to encounter an effective portrayal of Silverweed, whose words stimulate a vision of the reality of this twisted warren, one of a ceiling made of bones. Hazel now seems to be persuaded by Fiver, and Bigwig tells them both to leave, just before his snaring. We see Fiver's confrontation with Cowslip before the whole group leave to help Bigwig. Once Bigwig is free, Fiver doesn't get to deliver his sermon on the Warren of the Snares, but here he doesn't need to. The matter is already settled as they head for Watership Down. After the joyous arrival on the Down, they are joined by Holly, who confirms Fiver was right about Sandalford. As the story splits in three, Fiver becomes part of the Nuthanger Farm raids storyline. Fiver seems to have few misgivings about the raid at first, and is an active participant. The first raid having failed, Hazel asks Fiver for a vision of what will happen. Fiver agrees, but says he must never ask this of him again. The reluctant shaman indeed. Fiver's dream vision does give him a glimpse of the Bloody Hole, as well as of many taut ropes and a shotgun, but it is not clear enough to be a warning to Hazel. As the tired Fiver sleeps, Hazel sets off on the second, truly insane raid on the farm. Fiver joins Hazel and Bigwig at the farm in time for the chase through the farmhouse. After Hazel is shot, Fiver says he shouldn't have seen this in his vision, which you might say was alarming enough to call the whole thing off. And now, for the first time on film, we get to see Fiver's frightening vision in which he meets a human who mentions the hole that Hazel is in. The faceless man carries Fiver in his huge hands while talking to him, before flinging him to one side into a rope, rather than hitting him as he glances into the hole, as in the book. And having told the others where Hazel is, Fiver is not involved in his actual rescue. Again, as they set off for Ephrata, this time with the added motivation of freeing the kidnapped Clover, Fiver's involvement in the story reduces for a while. At the river test, Fiver tells Hazel it was his visions that got Hazel shot, as well as getting him found. While I'm not sure how true this is, it is a foreshadow for Fiver's lowest moment in this version of Watership Down, as he has a vision about a car he sees that leads them on a wild goose chase into the town of Overton. This car is indeed significant, just not yet. And Dandelion ends up having to rescue an over-curious Fiver from traffic just as he realises he has got this all wrong. All too often in this version, Fiver's visions actually end up not helping very much, and here no punt has been found on the test. As it begins to look as if Bigwig has failed in Ephrata, Fiver backs Blackberry's view that they should leave. But of course Bigwig has succeeded in a roundabout way, and in the absence of the punt they all take refuge in Overton, the low point of this mini-series. Once back on Watership Down, as in the book, Fiver has no sense of the approaching Great Patrol from Ephrata. Hazel asks him to try and make more sense of his visions. Fiver is active in the defence of Watership Down, caving in runs. They end up cornered by the honeycomb, and that is when Hazel's use of the word unbreakable sends Fiver straight to the other world, where his vision of taut ropes is augmented by the sight of the Nuthanger Farm dog. He returns to consciousness, fully aware and with the idea that was supposed to be Hazel's fully formed. In the last major departure from the book, Fiver joins Hazel and Blackavar in fetching the dog from the farm. It is Fiver who chews through the dog's rope, which knocks him over just before breaking, reflecting his earlier vision when he was thrown by the man. It is then Fiver who is caught by the cat and rescued by Lucy, the farm girl. We see Fiver being let out of the car he recognised in Overton by a human boy. His return to a victorious Watership Down is joyous. Later we see Hazel looking older and tired. Fiver joins him by the pond near the warren. Fiver knows the end is near for Hazel, calling him his leader, his brother, his friend, before leaving him, glancing back once. And as the Black Rabbit of Inlay takes Hazel to join her Owsla, we hear Bluebell recite the opening words of the novel as Fiver looks up into the sky, where a rabbit-shaped cloud heads towards the setting sun. Summing up. So that is Fiver, perhaps the character of the main three whose character suffers the least through all the versions of Watership Down, though his all too frequent rhyming visions and occasional immaturity in the 1999 to 2001 TV series were a bit grating. Overall, his portrayal in the 1978 film was the best, though, as I said earlier, the Netflix miniseries has some very effective moments of portraying his character. His voice actor in the miniseries, Nicholas Hoult, I think was far more suited to the role than Richard Briers in 1978, but the earlier portrayal edges it purely due to its overall production values and script. For a start, in the 1978 version, Fiver gets to actually use facial expressions, unlike the dead faces of the Netflix portrayal. And for a highly emotional rabbit such as Fiver, for whom both the apparent world and the world beyond can be such a frightening place, we need to see such expressions. Fiver's intense visions, like Bigwig's ability to employ extreme violence, are crucial to the story of Watership Down, but one suspects that by the end of the story they are both rather relieved that their talents will probably not be needed again. Next time, we begin looking at Hazel, and consider what made him Hazel Ra.